You need to learn your place in this family. That was what my daughter-in-law said to me, standing in my own kitchen. At the stove I'd cooked on for 31 years. She said it the way you'd correct a child who had wandered into the wrong room. Calm. Certain. Like the verdict had already been typed up and she was just reading it aloud. My son was sitting at the table behind her. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just turned his coffee cup in slow circles on the placemat, around and around, like he was waiting for the words to stop so he could pretend they hadn't happened. I set down the wooden spoon I was holding. I didn't slam it. I just set it down. I think, I said, that I know exactly where my place is. She smiled, the kind of smile that isn't one. Good, she said. Then you understand why we need some boundaries going forward. I nodded. I looked at my son. He was still looking at the table. I understood more than she knew. My name is Irene. I am 68 years old. I taught third grade for 26 years, raised 2 children, mostly on my own, after my husband. Leonard passed from a heart attack when our son was 14 and our daughter was 11. Kept this house running through every season, every crisis, every late utility bill, and broken furnace and leaking roof. I am not a woman who panics. I am not a woman who crumbles. But I am also not a woman who forgets. This is the story of the bakery. Leonard and I opened it in 1997. A small thing, tucked between a hardware store and a dry cleaner on Maple Street in Harnwell, Indiana. We called it Irene's because Leonard said the name had warmth to it, and he wanted every customer to feel it the moment they walked in. We sold cinnamon rolls, sourdough, a peach Danish that people drove 40 minutes for on Saturday mornings. Leonard did the books. I did the baking. By the time he died, we had 4 employees and a waiting list for custom wedding cakes. After he passed, I kept it going. I didn't know what else to do. The bakery was the one place where grief had no jurisdiction. Behind the counter, I was still useful. I was still needed. I was still Irene, not the widow, not the mother struggling to hold it together, just the woman with flour on her hands and something good coming out of the oven. My son, whose name is Douglas, started working there part-time when he was in high school. He had a talent for it, not for baking. He burned everything he touched, but for the business side. He knew how to talk to vendors, how to smooth over a difficult customer, how to make a spreadsheet sing. When he graduated college, he came back to Harnwell, and I let him take over the day-to-day management. I stepped back to part-time, took mornings, left the afternoons to him. It was supposed to be a partnership. It was supposed to be a bridge. Then he married Gretchen. Gretchen was efficient. That's the word I kept using. Early on, when I was still trying to be generous, efficient. She wore her hair pulled tight, kept a planner color-coded by category, and had opinions about everything from the font on the menu board to the temperature of the proofing drawer. She'd never worked in food service a day in her life. She'd been in corporate logistics. She said things like streamline and brand alignment and customer journey. She said them in the bakery at the counter in front of my employees who had worked there for years. The first time she suggested we discontinue the peach Danish, I laughed. I thought she was joking. She was not joking. It's seasonal and labor-intensive, she told Douglas that evening at my kitchen table. We're losing margin on it every summer. People come from Carmel for that Danish, I said. People came, she said. The market has shifted. I looked at Douglas. He tapped his pen against his notepad. We'll look at the numbers, he said. The Danish stayed that summer. Gone by the next. That's how it started, not with a fight. With a tap of a pen and a look at the numbers. And then slowly, one by one, the things I had built began to disappear. The chalkboard menu I'd hand-lettered every week, replaced with a printed laminated card. The back corner table, where regulars sat for hours over coffee, removed to fit 2 more bar stools. The name on the sign, that one I didn't find out about until a customer mentioned it in passing. I almost didn't recognize the place, she said. When'd you change the sign? I drove by that afternoon. It said Maple Street Bake Co. in clean sans serif letters. Irene's was gone. I called Douglas. He said it was a branding decision. He said Gretchen had done research. He said he'd meant to mention it. I sat in my car in front of the building for a long time. The parking lot had been repaved, new, smooth. Even the ground didn't look like mine anymore. At home, I made myself tea and sat at the kitchen table with the original lease agreement, the business registration, and Leonard's last letter to me, which he wrote 3 months before he died when he knew something was wrong but didn't yet have a name for it. He wrote, "Whatever happens to the bakery, Make sure it keeps the warmth. That was all. Just that. The bakery was legally mine. I'd never transferred ownership. I'd let Douglas manage it, let Gretchen restructure it, let them both redesign it until I no longer recognized it. But the deed of the business and the property it sat on were still in my name. Leonard and I had paid off the building in 2011. I'd been so busy trying to be gracious that I'd never thought to be careful. Then came the kitchen conversation. The one where Gretchen told me to learn my place. It was a Tuesday in October. I'd stopped by to drop off a batch of the molasses cookies I still made for the employees at the holidays. A small thing. A tradition. Gretchen met me at the back door like a security checkpoint. "We've actually moved away from that," she said, meaning the cookies, meaning me appearing unannounced, meaning probably several other things I hadn't figured out yet. "I make these every year," I said. "I know, and it's sweet. But the staff has changed and some of them have dietary restrictions. And honestly, it creates an awkward dynamic when the owner's mother shows up." Owner's mother. I was 67 years old. I had opened the doors of that bakery before Douglas was old enough to ride a bicycle. And I was the owner's mother. I followed her inside because I didn't know what else to do. That's when it happened. The stove, the spoon, the verdict already printed and folded, and Douglas with his coffee cup going in circles. When I left that afternoon, I drove to the park at the end of Oak Street and sat on a bench by the pond for 45 minutes. A man was feeding ducks with his granddaughter. She kept throwing the bread too far, and he kept gently redirecting her arm. A small, patient kindness. I watched them until my hands stopped shaking. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was something older and quieter than anger. The feeling of standing in a room that used to be yours and not recognizing the furniture. I drove home and called my daughter. Her name is Lily, and she lives in Portland. And she is the only person in the world who knew Leonard the same way I did. She was 11 when he died, but she remembered everything. The smell of his jacket, the way he whistled while he did dishes, the specific tone of his laugh when something actually surprised him. She called me every Sunday and sometimes on Wednesdays for no reason. I told her what had happened. There was a long silence on the line. "Mom," she said finally, "do you still own the building?" "Yes." Another silence. "And the business registration?" "Still in my name, Mom." Her voice was careful now, steady. "I think you need to talk to someone, not me." A lawyer. I already had one in mind. Bud Calloway had handled our original lease, our business incorporation, Leonard's will. He was 72 now, and still practiced out of the same office on 5th Street with the same brown carpeting and the same coffee maker that gurgled like it was suffering. I called him the next morning. "Irene," he said when I sat down across from him, "you look like someone who's made a decision." "I think I have," I said. "I just need to know if I can." He reviewed the documents slowly. He was that kind of lawyer, unhurried, thorough, the kind that actually reads what's in front of him. After 20 minutes, he set them down. "The property is yours outright," he said. "The business is incorporated under your name with Douglas listed as general manager. He has operational authority, not ownership. You can revoke that designation. And as the property owner, you have the right to terminate the lease agreement, which," he checked his notes, "you've been renting to the business entity at below market rate for 11 years. "At no rate," I said. "I never charged Douglas rent." Bud looked up. "Irene, you've been giving him a free commercial property for 11 years. "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "What would you like to do?" I looked out his window at 5th Street below. 2 women walking dogs. A delivery truck. Ordinary morning, ordinary Tuesday. The world going on exactly as it always did. "I want to sell the building," I said. "I've had an offer I never pursued. A woman approached me 2 years ago. She runs a small cafe group, 3 locations. She wanted to expand to Harnwell. I told her I wasn't ready. Are you ready now?" I thought about the sign. Maple Street Bake Co. in clean sans serif. The peach Danish, the chalkboard. The name I gave the business because Leonard said it had warmth. "I am," I said. Bud made a call that afternoon. The woman's name was Priscilla Oates, and she answered on the second ring. And when he told her the property on Maple Street had become available, she said, "And I'm telling you this exactly," she said. "Oh, thank God." I did not tell Douglas. I know that sounds cold. Maybe it was. But here's what I knew. The moment I told him, Gretchen would be in that conversation within the hour, and by morning it would become a negotiation. And negotiations require good faith on both sides. We'd run out of that somewhere between the peach Danish and the sign. The inspection was scheduled for a Thursday after closing. I met Priscilla there myself. She was my age, small and direct, with the kind of energy that suggests she hasn't wasted a morning in 40 years. She walked through the bakery with her contractor, nodded at the kitchen layout, asked about the ovens, ran her hand along the counter where I'd stood for the better part of 2 decades. "Good bones," she said. "My husband chose the counter height," I said. "He was 6'2". It drove the shorter staff crazy, but they got used to it. She smiled. "We'll probably keep it." We closed 6 weeks later. Full price, no contingencies. I sat at my kitchen table the morning the funds transferred and drank my coffee and didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, like something had finally been said that I'd been holding in my chest for 3 years without the words for it. Douglas called at 8:47 a.m. He'd been notified by the title company. I let it ring. He called 4 more times before noon. I listened to the voicemails in order. The first one was confused, the second one was alarmed, the third one had Gretchen's voice in the background coaching what to say, and the fourth one, the last one, was just Douglas. Tired, quiet, like a man who had finally looked up from his coffee cup. "Mom, I don't understand. I thought we were building something together. I thought this was going to be our family legacy. You can't just sell without talking to me." This was our place. Our place. That was the word he used. Ours. I wrote him a letter that night. I didn't plan to send it. Writing it was just the only way I knew to put the thing down so I could stop carrying it. "Douglas," I wrote, "you didn't notice when I stopped having opinions. You didn't notice when I stopped coming in on Wednesdays. You didn't notice when the chalkboard came down. You didn't notice the sign. Your father's name was on the incorporation papers until 2003. Did you know that? He signed everything with his whole hand, like he meant it. I have watched everything we built together quietly taken apart, piece by piece, and I said nothing because I didn't want to make things difficult. But there is a difference between not wanting to make things difficult and being willing to disappear. I am your mother. I was here before Gretchen. I was here before the brand alignment and the customer journey and the laminated menu. I built this with your father and I kept it for you, and you let someone tell me to learn my place in my own kitchen. I didn't sell the bakery to punish you. I sold it because I was done making room for people who were done making room for me. I folded the letter and put it in the same drawer where I keep Leonard's last note. Some letters are not for sending. They're for writing, so you can finally set the thing down. Lily called the next evening. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it, which surprised me. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Did you know Priscilla Oates is going to keep 3 of your former employees?" She told me. "She's going to call the new location Oates & Co. But she asked if she could put a small acknowledgement in the window. Something about the original founder." I set my tea down. She said she looked up the history of the building. She found the original Irene sign listed in a local history article from 2004. She's having a replica made. I didn't say anything for a moment. "Mom?" Lily said. "I'm here," I said. I'm here." Douglas came to the house 3 weeks later, without Gretchen. That was the first thing I noticed. He stood on the porch holding a paper bag from a bakery in Indianapolis. Not the good one, just a chain. And he looked older than I expected. Like something had settled onto him. "Can I come in?" he said. I stepped back from the door. We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't open the bag. He just left it between us. "I didn't know about the kitchen conversation," he said. "What she said to you? You were sitting right there." "I know." He looked at his hands. "I know I was." I didn't say anything. I'd spent enough years filling silences that weren't mine to fill. "I've been thinking," he said, "about all the things I didn't say. Not just that day. For a long time." "Douglas," I said, "I'm not angry at you." He looked up. "I was for a while," I said, "but that passed. What I needed wasn't an argument. I just needed to not disappear." I looked at him carefully. "Do you understand that?" He was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. Not the kind of nod that means yes, I hear you. The kind that means I am only beginning to understand what I missed. That's enough, I thought. That's a start. After he left, I opened the paper bag. Inside was a cinnamon roll from the chain bakery, wrapped in wax paper, and beside it, in Douglas's handwriting on a napkin. I remember the peach Danish. "I'm sorry I let it go." I put the napkin in the drawer with the letter and Leonard's note. The new place I'd found was a cottage on the edge of town, past the grain elevator, down a road that turned to gravel after the second stop sign. It had a kitchen with good light and a back porch facing a field that went gold in October. The landlord was an older woman who kept bees and didn't ask questions and told me the previous tenant had been a retired schoolteacher who'd grown tomatoes along the fence line for 30 years. Still comes up every spring, she said about the tomatoes. You don't have to do anything, just let them. I moved in on a Saturday. Lily drove down from Portland to help, and we carried boxes through the front door all afternoon. And when we were done, we sat on the back porch with cold water, and she said, "It smells like something good is going to happen here." It already did, I said. She looked at me sideways. What I mean, I said, is that I'm here. That's the good thing. I started baking again that first week. Not for anyone, just for me. Sourdough on Tuesday, a simple loaf. Cinnamon rolls on Saturday, the way I'd always made them. The way Leonard had eaten them, standing up at the counter because he couldn't wait. I didn't open a bakery. I didn't plan to. I just let the kitchen smell the way kitchens are supposed to smell. A woman from down the road knocked on the door in November. She said she'd smelled the bread. I haven't baked bread on purpose in 6 years, she said. Since my husband passed, the smell of it through the window just about did me in. I gave her the loaf. We stood at the door talking for 40 minutes. Her name was June. Wait, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Her name was Harriet. No, those aren't right either. Her name was Opal, and she was 73, and she'd lived alone since 2018, and she came back the next Tuesday to return the bread pan and stayed for coffee. Some things find you when you stop trying to hold on to the old things so tightly. The sign, the small wooden one that Priscilla had made, went up in January. I saw a photograph of it online, posted by a customer. It read, Maple Street Bake Co., in the space formerly known as Irene's Est, 1997. We bake in honor of what was built here. I printed the photo and put it on the refrigerator, not because I needed the acknowledgement. I'd stopped needing that somewhere around the time I signed the sale documents and walked out into an ordinary Thursday afternoon and breathed like I'd been holding that breath for years. I put it on the refrigerator because Leonard would have gotten a kick out of it, because he always said the name had warmth. And someone finally agreed. If this story found you today, if any part of it sounded like something you've carried in your own chest, I hope you know that leaving the table is not the same as losing. Sometimes it's the only way to remember you were never a guest. You were the one who said it.